The icy spray of the overswollen creek, now a churning beast of mud and debris, lashed Jack's face as his worn sneakers slipped on a treacherous, moss-slick rock. For one heart-stopping, eternal instant, 7-year-old Penny, clinging to his back like a desperate limpet, lurched precariously towards the raging brown water that roared with the hunger of 1,000 wolves. A raw, desperate grunt tore from Jack's throat as he wrenched them back from the brink, his broken left arm screaming a protest that was utterly consumed by the thunderous crescendo of the current. This was their third day, and the Vermont woods, already a disorienting labyrinth of primordial fear, had transformed into a waterlogged, inescapable trap. Only an hour earlier, their fragile hope had been ripped apart by a different kind of terror. They'd been huddled beneath a meager outcrop, Jack trying to coax Penny to eat a few damp, bitter berries, when a rustling in the undergrowth, too heavy for a squirrel, too deliberate for the wind, had frozen them. A juvenile black bear, likely separated from its mother, had ambled into view, its snout twitching, curious and potentially dangerous. Jack, reacting on pure adrenaline, had shoved Penny deeper into the crevice. "Stay down, Penny Pie, don't move," he'd hissed, and then grabbed a fist-sized rock with his good hand. He'd yelled a thin, reedy sound against the vastness of the woods and hurled the rock towards a dense thicket to the bear's left. The startled animal, more surprised than aggressive, had snorted, then ambled off in the direction of the noise, but not before its dark, intelligent eyes had met Jack's for a chilling moment. A look that promised a return if its curiosity or hunger persisted. The encounter had stolen precious minutes and shattered their already frayed nerves, forcing them closer to the increasingly volatile creek as their only discernible path. Filtered, bruised light from a sky still pregnant with unshed rain. A bruised purple-gray canvas cast long, menacing shadows that writhed and danced through the dripping pine branches. His makeshift shelter from the previous night, a pitiful collection of branches and leaves, was a sodden, obliterated ruin. Drowsy confusion, the kind that made the world soft and distant, was a luxury he couldn't afford. Reality was a relentless predator, its claws already deep in his flesh. The woods, the seemingly endless sodden walk ahead, the crushing, almost unbearable weight of responsibility. It all pressed down on his 7-year-old shoulders, threatening to snap his slender frame. Penny, his 4-year-old sister, shivered uncontrollably against his back, her small voice a frightened whisper, barely audible against the cacophony of the storm-fed waters. "Jack, I'm scared. The water's so angry, like a monster." Her thumb, raw and chapped, was jammed between her lips, a dirt-caked smudge across one pale cheek. Her strawberry blonde hair matted with twigs, pine needles, and a streak of mud. Jack forced a steadiness into his own voice, a fragile imitation of courage he didn't feel. "It's okay, Penny Pie. We're just playing a very tricky game with the stream. A splashy, jumpy game. We'll beat it, you'll see." He settled her more securely, his good hand trembling slightly, brushing a damp, decaying leaf from her forehead. These fleeting moments of reassurance, these flimsy barricades of lies, were all he had to offer against the rising, choking tide of despair. "We'll be okay." He mouthed silently the words, a desperate prayer, more than a promise, a mantra against the encroaching darkness. "We have to find someone today. We just have to." The horrifying events of 3 days prior replayed through his mind like a recurring fever-induced nightmare, each detail etched with agonizing clarity. Raymond Mercer's announcement of a special surprise camping trip, a cruel, twisted euphemism that had begun with forced, brittle smiles and cheap, brightly colored convenience store candy bars that tasted like ash in Jack's mouth. The drive that grew progressively longer, quieter, Raymond's jovial facade cracking and falling away, with every passing mile revealing the cold, hard malice beneath. The sudden jarring stop on a desolate, forgotten logging road, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. Raymond ordering them out of the battered pickup truck, their small, flimsy backpacks containing little more than a single change of clothes, a shared half-empty water bottle, and a crushing sense of foreboding. And then, the moment that had irrevocably shattered their fragile world, Raymond turning to look at them, his eyes colder, harder, and more terrifying than the biting October wind, and uttering the words that would forever echo in Jack's nightmares. This is where garbage belongs, out in the woods with the rest of the trash. The fading, indifferent growl of the engine, the mocking crimson tail lights vanishing into the oppressive gathering gloom, leaving them utterly terrifyingly alone in a vast, uncaring wilderness. Jack shifted Penny's slight weight, wincing involuntarily as pain-sharp electric and nauseating shot through his broken left arm. The dishcloth Diane Raymond's timid, haunted wife had hastily wrapped around it 5 days ago, secured with a bizarre combination of duct tape and hope, was now a filthy, stiffened rag, grotesquely stained with mud grime and dried, flaking blood. He knew with the chilling certainty that came from constant, unrelenting agony that it was far more than a simple sprain. A deep, insistent pulsing ache that occasionally flared into blinding, white-hot agony, a sickening, unnatural warmth radiating from the swollen, discolored flesh. These were dire, unmistakable warnings his young mind struggled to comprehend, but his body screamed at him. But Penny came first. Always. His own suffering was a distant secondary concern. "Jack, is Mr. Raymond coming back for us?" Penny's voice, impossibly small, and laced with a desperate childlike hope against his neck, lanced his heart like a shard of ice. He swallowed the bitter metallic taste of the necessary soul-crushing lie. "No, remember what I told you. We're on a super-secret, extra-special adventure, just you and me. We're adventurers. We're following the stream to the legendary Candy Castle." He invented it on the spot, sheer desperation fueling his flagging imagination, painting a vivid picture against the grim canvas of their reality. Penny's lower lip trembled violently. "I'm hungry, Jack. So hungry. And my tummy hurts really bad. I know, Peanut. Me too." His own stomach was a hollow, aching pit gnawing at him relentlessly. He reached into his sodden, battered backpack, with his good hand fumbling. One half of a single stale granola bar remained alongside their dented water bottle, now terrifyingly, accusingly empty. The handful of wild berries they'd scavenged yesterday morning, their tartness, a brief shock of flavor, felt like a distant, faded dream. "We'll imagine a big, yummy breakfast at the Candy Castle, okay? Chocolate rivers flowing with marshmallows and pancake mountains topped with whipped cream and sprinkles." He broke the already meager piece of granola bar in half again, meticulously offering her the slightly larger portion. She nibbled it slowly, almost reverently, her unwavering faith in his fabricated stories, a fragile, precious shield against the brutal, unyielding harshness of their reality. They needed to keep moving to push forward. Last night's desperate decision to follow the stream, a snippet of information gleaned from a half-remembered nature program, "Water always leads to people," was their only beacon, their sole tenuous thread of hope in this vast, indifferent wilderness. The Vermont woods, usually a stunning, breathtaking tapestry of crimson maple, golden birch, and deep green pine in early October, stretched in every conceivable direction, an indifferent, seemingly endless expanse of silent, watchful trees. The air, already unseasonably chill, carried the damp, biting promise of the recent storm, hinting at more misery to come. He could feel it in his bones, in the intensifying throb of his broken arm. He remembered passing an old, crumbling, moss-covered stone wall yesterday afternoon, a haunting remnant of some long-forgotten farm swallowed whole by the relentless, encroaching forest. Penny, momentarily distracted from her fear, had asked if giants had built it. "Maybe," he'd whispered, trying to inject a note of wonder into his voice. "Giants who were very kind and left paths for lost adventurers to follow." Such fleeting fragments of fantasy of make-believe were their only provisions against the suffocating, ever-present despair. "Time to go, Penny Lou," he said, his voice hoarse, using their mother's old beloved nickname for her. a phantom echo from a life that felt centuries away. The Candy Castle, with its peppermint gates, waits for no one, not even super brave explorers like us. Penny slid carefully off his back, her once pink sneakers now caked with thick clinging mud and sticky pine sap squelching forlornly on the damp, unforgiving earth. Her small, cold hand automatically sought his. He let her hold his right hand, keeping his injured left arm cradled protectively close to his body, a useless, agonizing appendage that radiated heat and pain with every movement. "Do you think we'll find Mom at the Candy Castle?" She asked, her voice infused with a pure, heartbreaking, childlike hope that was both a crushing weight and a strange, unexpected source of fortitude for Jack. Their mother, gone 2 long, agonizing years, now lost to the insidious, inescapable grip of the needle they'd found, lying beside her still pale body. Penny had been only 2 then, a bewildered toddler. Jack 5, old enough to comprehend the horror, old enough to dial 911, a number his mother, in her fleeting, precious moments of lucidity, had drilled into him with a chilling, desperate intensity. "Just in case, my brave boy. Just in case Mommy gets too sleepy. Mom's watching over us, Penny Pie, from her own special castle up in the stars, remember?" He said gently, the familiar words, a bittersweet comfort. "But we'll find someone nice, someone really kind, who can help us phone her star castle. Maybe they have a special phone at the Candy Castle." As they trudged wearily along the treacherous, slippery bank of the now swollen, angry stream, Jack's mind, a reluctant, overflowing archive of sorrow and betrayal, drifted inexorably back through the dizzying, painful carousel of foster homes. The Wilsons kind, but overwhelmed their home, smelling perpetually of lavender and regret. The Bryants, with their forced Sunday cookies and the chilling weeknight shouting matches that echoed through the thin walls. The Parkers, a brief, terrifying, heart-wrenching separation from Penny that only ended when his desperate, silent hunger strike had finally miraculously reunited them. Then 2 more, a bewildering blur of new rules, new faces, new disappointments, each one chipping away another piece of his dwindling childhood. 6 weeks ago, it had been the Mercers. M.S. Collins, their latest overworked, perpetually stressed social worker, had promised them, her voice strained with false cheer. "You're going to love it there, kids. A big, beautiful house in the country, acres of land, no other children. All their attention will be on you." At first, it had almost seemed so. A sprawling 2-story colonial, deceptively charming, set on acres of neatly manicured land. Separate but adjoining rooms, a brand new fluffy stuffed bear for Penny, which she'd immediately christened Barnaby. Diane Raymond's wife, with her gentle hands and sad eyes, had gardened with them, letting them pluck sweet, sun-warmed cherry tomatoes directly from the vine. Raymond, initially jovial, almost excessively, so worked from home in investments, a vague term that seemed to involve a lot of hushed, angry phone calls. He'd even played catch with Jack in the sprawling backyard, bought them ice cream from a cheerfully chiming truck, called him Sport in a voice that dripped with manufactured bonhomie. But the warning signs, subtle at first, insidious specters from past homes Jack had learned to recognize with an instinct born of trauma, were there. Diane's almost imperceptible telltale flinch whenever Raymond's voice rose even slightly, her meticulous obsessive adherence to his unspoken, often arbitrary rules, and the sudden oppressive silences that would fall over the dinner table when Raymond's mood inexplicably soured over some perceived culinary flaw or a misplaced fork. 3 weeks in the carefully constructed mask had slipped, revealing the ugliness beneath. Penny, in a moment of childlike exuberance, had spilled a glass of milk, the white liquid spreading like an accusation across the polished wood floor. Raymond's face had contorted with a shocking, disproportionate rage, his eyes blazing. Jack, a blur of practiced, almost reflexive apology and swift, efficient cleanup. Diane a frozen, silent statue by the sink, her knuckles bone-white as she gripped the counter. After that pivotal incident, Raymond's temper became a constant looming thundercloud, poisoning the very air they breathed. He never hit them, not directly. He was too cunning, too manipulative for that. But his anger, his simmering resentment, was a palpable, suffocating presence. Jack quickly became an expert meteorologist of Raymond's volatile moods, learning to read the subtle tightening of his jaw, the impatient drumming of his fingers on the table, the sudden chilling silences that invariably heralded an approaching storm. Diane's feeble attempts to intervene, her whispered desperate pleas behind closed doors. Raymond, please, they're just children, were usually tragically futile. He'd heard her crying late at night, muffled sobs from their bedroom, the day his arm was broken. He and Penny had been in the backyard, Penny giggling as she tried to teach Barnaby to swing on the old tire swing, Raymond on a furious phone call in his home office, his voice escalating in volume and venom. Jack had heard snippets, lost everything. That damn account. Need more time. The back door had slammed open with such force the glass pane rattled. Raymond stalking across the yard like a caged animal, his face a terrifying mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He wasn't seeing them, Jack realized, with a sickening jolt of terror. They were merely inconvenient, insignificant objects in his path, obstacles to be brushed aside or obliterated. When Raymond drew back his foot to deliver a vicious kick to Molly, the mercer's sweet, aging golden retriever, who had innocently trotted over to greet him, Jack had reacted purely on instinct, a desperate, selfless impulse, throwing himself between the beloved dog and the descending heavy work boot. The sickening, audible crack of bone had echoed in the sudden ringing silence that followed. Diane, pale as a ghost, and trembling violently, had rushed him inside her face, a mask of terror and dawning comprehension. Later, after she'd inexpertly bound his arm with a faded dishcloth and a roll of gleaming silver duct tape. Just a bad sprain, honey, a really bad sprain. It'll be okay, you'll see. Her voice shaking, her eyes darting nervously towards the closed kitchen door, Jack overheard their venomous, whispered argument from the kitchen, the words slithering under the door like poisonous snakes. We have to take him to a doctor. Raymond, his arm. It could be broken. Look at it. Diane's voice, usually placid and gentle, was tight, with a rare, desperate fear. And tell them what, Diane? That I kicked him trying to protect the damn dog. Use your head, for God's sake. Do you have any idea what would happen? They'll ask questions, so many questions. That new nosy social worker Collins, she already looks at me like I'm something she scraped off her shoe. One whiff of trouble, one tiny suspicion, and they'll take the kids, start a full-blown investigation. Our license, the house, everything we've worked for. Gone. Raymond's voice was a low, dangerous hiss. And what about the other thing? What if that comes out? The other thing? What are you talking about? We could say he fell from the tire swing. A simple accident. His arm is fine. Kids are resilient. They bounce back. Give him some Tylenol, for crying out loud. It'll heal. End of story. There was a pause, then more menacingly. And Diane, if you even think about calling anyone, you'll regret it. We need to keep a low profile right now. Especially now. Raymond's casual, callous cruelty had been underscored by a chilling, ruthless pragmatism. He knows how the system works, Jack had realized with a cold dread that settled deep in his stomach. He knows how to play it. He's hiding something. The next 3 days were a strange, surreal limbo. Raymond, uncharacteristically, almost disturbingly solicitous, offering Jack insincere apologies and extra helpings of dessert. Diane, hovering anxiously, her eyes wide with unshed tears and a profound, palpable fear. No more mention of a doctor. Then the bombshell of the special surprise camping trip. Diane's eyes, when Raymond announced it with forced cheerfulness, had mirrored Jack's own burgeoning terror, but they both knew with a shared silent understanding that objecting was utterly futile, potentially dangerous. Her parting whisper to Jack as Raymond brusquely loaded them and their meager bags into the truck still echoed a chilling premonition in his ears. He's been so strange, Jack. Erratic. Since that last big phone call. He lost a lot of money, he said. He keeps muttering about loose ends and tying things up. And their mother's little secret. Be careful, baby. Please be so careful. It had been a desperate coded warning, a frantic fragmented plea he hadn't fully understood until the red taillights of the pickup had mercilessly disappeared into the encroaching darkness, leaving them to the mercy of the wilderness. Their mother's little secret. What secret, Jack? Jack, I'm really, really tired now. My legs feel like wiggly noodles. Can we rest, please? Penny's voice, now thin, reedy, and trembling with exhaustion, pulled him abruptly from the bitter, suffocating memories. They'd been walking for what felt like an eternity, the raging, thunderous creek, their only unwelcome, terrifying companion. Just a little bit longer, Penny Lou, he urged, though his own legs were leaden heavy as stone, and his arm throbbed with a relentless, fiery, merciless beat. See that big, mossy rock over there? The one that looks like a giant's comfy armchair. We'll rest there. It's a royal throne for Princess Penny. The boulder, damp and cold, offered a precarious, slippery perch just above the swirling, greedy water. Penny leaned heavily against his good side, her small, shivering body, a fragile, flickering warmth against his. Tell me a story, Jack. Tell me about the magic house again. The magic house. His nightly whispered balm for Penny's fears, a fantastical sanctuary woven from dreams and desperation. A place of infinite comfort, ever changing to suit their immediate, desperate needs. As he spun the familiar, comforting tale, his voice low, raspy, and barely audible against the deafening roar of the creek, embellishing it this time with a sparkling gingerbread roof and marshmallow pathways for their necessary Candy Castle detour. He scanned the relentless, hostile, watchful woods. The October sun, when it briefly appeared through a break in the churning clouds, was a pale, watery, indifferent disk, offering no warmth, no comfort, no hope. They had already endured 2 terrifying nights in this unforgiving wilderness. A third in these rapidly deteriorating conditions, with his fever climbing and their strength failing, felt chillingly like a potential death sentence. His own shivering was becoming uncontrollable, violent spasms that shook his entire body. Getting Penny down from the precarious boulder was a clumsy, nerve-wracking struggle. She stumbled, her small foot catching on a hidden root, scraping her palm raw on the rough granite. Tears, fat and silent, welled in her eyes and traced clean paths through the grime on her cheeks. He cleaned the wound as best he could with the last tiny smear of antiseptic ointment from a miniature first aid kit Diane, in a surprising, fleeting moment of maternal concern, had surreptitiously tucked into his backpack. You're tough, Penny. Super tough, just like Mom always said. The mention of their mother, a bittersweet, aching anchor in the storm of their lives. As the day wore on, the clouds, which had briefly deceptively thinned, gathered again with a renewed, malevolent purpose. A cold, persistent, miserable drizzle began to fall, rapidly morphing into a driving, stinging rain. Jack's spirits, already foundering in a sea of despair, sank further, threatening to drown him. Penny was flagging badly, her steps becoming smaller, slower, her tiny frame drooping with exhaustion. I can't walk anymore, Jack. She finally whimpered, stopping dead in her tracks, her face a mask of utter misery. My feet hurt so much. I'm so hungry. I want to go home. The word home was a cruel, bitter irony. They had no home. Just a succession of temporary addresses of borrowed beds and fleeting, fragile hopes. He knelt the movement, sending fresh waves of agony through his arm. Climb on, Penny Lou. We're nearly there. But your arm. It hurts you, Jack. I see it in your face. It's fine. He lied the word, echoing Raymond's callous, dismissive tone from days ago. The lie felt like ash and bile in his mouth. She was light, terrifyingly light, for a 4-year-old, a bundle of sharp elbows and knees, but each jolting step sent daggers of pure, unadulterated agony through his broken limb. He focused desperately on the rhythmic, deafening sound of the rushing water, on Penny's soft, hitched, almost silent breathing against his ear, on anything but the consuming, incandescent pain. The rain intensified, a torrential downpour soaking through his thin, tattered shirt in seconds. His teeth chattered uncontrollably. Penny, huddled inside his own too large, threadbare denim jacket, was at least partially shielded from the worst of it. Just as daylight began to bleed from the sky, a sickly, bruised gray giving way to an oppressive, suffocating black, Jack finally spotted it. Not a proper shelter, nothing close, but a deep, shadowed overhang, beneath a dense, protective tangle of fallen, ancient hemlocks, their thick, overlapping boughs offering a modicum of protection from the relentless, hammering deluge. The ground beneath was marginally less sodden, a thin layer of pine needles providing a scant barrier against the damp earth. It would have to do. It was all they had. He gently, carefully set Penny down. We'll stay here tonight, okay, Peanut? A secret forest fort just for us? Super hidden. Using his good arm, his teeth, and sheer, desperate, unwavering will, he dragged more fallen branches slick with rain and moss to create a crude, pitiful windbreak. The effort left him trembling violently, his vision blurring alarmingly at the edges, black spots dancing before his eyes. Penny huddled, a small, silent, shivering ball, watching him with wide, terrified, luminous eyes. He had nothing left to offer her. No food, no water, no dry clothes. Only the rapidly failing, inadequate warmth of his own feverish body. The last vestiges of the weak, watery light were extinguished. With it, his hope. Are we going to be okay, Jack? Penny's voice was a tiny, fragile thread in the vast, stormy, impenetrable darkness. He lay down beside her on the cold, damp pine needles, pulling her close, positioning himself as a flimsy, inadequate barrier against the biting wind and driving rain. Yes. He said the single word, a monumental, exhausting effort stolen from a dwindling reserve of strength he didn't know he possessed. We're going to be fine. I promise. Tomorrow. Tomorrow the storm will be all gone. The sun will come out. We'll keep following the stream, and we'll find people. Kind people. Promise. He had to believe it. For her sake, he had to manifest it into reality. The rain hammered down with merciless, unceasing fury. Penny, utterly exhausted, finally fell into a fitful, whimpering sleep, her small body twitching. Jack remained awake, shivering uncontrollably, listening to the terrifying, wild symphony of the storm. Wind shrieking like a banshee through the straining trees, branches groaning and cracking ominously overhead, the swollen river, a monstrous, hungry, roaring beast nearby. His arm was a throbbing, incandescent coal of fire. He drifted in and out of feverish, disjointed, hallucinatory thoughts. His mother's face smiling sadly, her eyes filled with an apology he couldn't decipher. Raymond's cold, calculating eyes, devoid of any human emotion. Diane's tear-streaked, haunted face as she'd whispered her desperate, fragmented warning. Loose ends. Their mother's little secret. Tying things up. The words circled him like vultures waiting. A sudden, violent, deafening crack of thunder so close it seemed to detonate directly overhead, jolted him fully, terrifyingly awake. Penny screamed a raw, piercing sound of pure terror, burrowing into him with frantic strength. Then another sound closer, more sinister, more terrifying than the storm itself. a deep guttural, menacing growl followed by the distinct sharp snapping of undergrowth. Not a raccoon, not the bear cub from before. This was different. Bigger, pack-like. Wolves, he remembered hushed, fearful tales from one long-ago foster father, a grizzled, experienced hunter about elusive black wolf packs that roamed these remote, wild Vermont mountains, shadows in the deep woods. Jack's heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. He pulled Penny tighter, every protesting muscle in his body screaming in agony. Shh. Penny. Stay still. Don't make a sound. Not a peep. His whisper was swallowed by the wind. The growling came again, closer this time, accompanied by a chorus of lower, hungry snarls. A hulking shadow, then two, then three, materialized at the very edge of their inadequate, pathetic shelter, menacing silhouettes against the faintest, bruised pre-dawn light that was struggling to penetrate the storm clouds. Jack could smell them. A rank, musky, wild odor that spoke of raw, untamed nature and primal hunger. He squeezed his eyes shut, bracing himself for the inevitable, a silent, desperate prayer forming on his lips. Keep Penny safe. Please, God, just keep Penny safe. Take me, but keep her safe. The shadows paused, sniffed the air audibly. Another growl lower this time, less aggressive perhaps, more cautious, curious. Then miraculously, almost unbelievably, the sounds began to recede. The creatures, whatever they were, seemed to move on their heavy padding treads, fading slowly, almost imperceptibly, into the storm's continuing violent cacophony. Jack lay there, trembling uncontrollably for what felt like an eternity. An eon, Penny, a dead weight of terror and exhaustion in his arms. When he finally dared to open his eyes, the first weak, reluctant, bruised tendrils of a reluctant dawn were seeping like old blood through the trees. The relentless rain had blessedly lessened to a fine, miserable drizzle. The immediate terrifying threat had passed. But he was chilled to the very marrow of his bones, his arm an unbearable, radiating torment of throbbing agony, and his head pounded with a vicious, disorienting, relentless rhythm. Fever. He knew it. A bad one. He had to get them moving. Now. Penny stirred beside him, her breath catching in a sob. Jack, is the monster gone? The forest grumblers. It's gone, Penny Pie. All gone. He lied, his voice raspy and weak. Just a grumpy old forest grumbler and his friends probably scared of the big storm even more than us. They ran away. He helped her up, his movements stiff, agonizingly clumsy. His own jacket, the one she wore, was soaked through and heavy. His thin shirt clung to him like an icy, constricting shroud. They drank greedily from a murky puddle of rainwater cupped in a broad, waxy leaf, the taste metallic, earthy, and deeply unsatisfying. There was no food, nothing. The stream, their supposed lifeline, had transformed overnight into a raging, muddy, debris-choked torrent, a terrifying, impassable monster. Following its treacherous bank was no longer an option. It was an undeniable death trap. He'd have to try and find higher ground, somehow keep the sound of the water in earshot. As a crude compass and prey, they stumbled onto a trail, a road, anything. His head swam dangerously. Each step was an act of monumental, excruciating will. He stumbled badly, catching himself just before he pitched face first into the mud. Penny crying out in fresh alarm. "You don't look good," Jack Penny said, her small, smudged face etched with a raw fear that mirrored his own rising internal panic. "Your cheeks are all red like when I had the bad sick. But you're shivering so much." "I'm fine." He rasped the lie, weaker, more transparent than ever. Just a little sleepy. Super sleepy." They struggled onward, Jack weaving like a drunkard, his vision periodically dimming, gray spots exploding behind his eyes. He knew with a terrifying certainty that he was failing. Penny, sensing his rapid, alarming decline with an instinct born of shared trauma, began to pull at his good hand with surprising strength, urging him forward with a desperate, fierce energy born of pure fear. "Come on, Jack, the Candy Castle. We have to get there. Remember the chocolate rivers?" They came to a place where the furiously swollen river had gouged a new, deep, impassable channel directly across their path, a chaotic, dangerous jumble of uprooted fallen trees, slick, sucking mud, and churning, angry water. To go around meant plunging even deeper into the unknown, trackless, menacing forest. He sank to his knees, utterly, hopelessly defeated. The last of his strength, his will, evaporated. Jack Penny's voice was high-pitched, sharp with panic. "Jack, get up. Please, Jack, get up. We have to go." He tried, he truly tried, but his legs wouldn't obey. They were numb, useless. The world tilted, colors blurring into a nauseating swirl. He pitched forward heavily. Penny screamed, a long, terrified, piercing sound that was swallowed by the vast, indifferent woods. From the swirling, encroaching darkness, a voice. Chillingly familiar, utterly dreadful. "Well, well, well. What have we here, naughty little rats? Thought I told you garbage to stay put, didn't I?" Jack's eyes, heavy as lead, snapped open. Through a blinding, disorienting haze of burning fever and searing pain, he saw him, Raymond Mercer. Standing a few feet away, looking disheveled, his clothes torn, his face a terrifying mask of cold, unhinged fury. A thick, heavy branch clutched in one hand like a primitive club. He must have doubled back, hunted them down. Diane's desperate whispered warning about loose ends and their mother's little secret slammed into Jack's consciousness with the force of a physical blow, bringing with it a sickening, horrifying clarity. This wasn't just abandonment. This was something far more sinister. Diane, that stupid, sniveling bitch she called the cops, "you little miscreant brats." Raymond snarled, his wild eyes darting around, paranoia etched into every line of his face. "Thought you could ruin me. Did you destroy everything? After all the trouble I went to for that information, I'll show you ruin." He took a menacing step closer, the branch held ready. Penny, bless her terrified, brave, loyal little heart, planted herself squarely in front of Jack's prone form. "Leave my brother alone," she shrieked, her tiny body trembling violently, but her voice, though high-pitched, held a note of fierce, unwavering defiance. "Don't you hurt him?" Raymond laughed, a harsh, ugly, grating sound that echoed unnervingly in the clearing. "Loyal to the bitter end. How very touching. Shame it won't do you a damn bit of good." He raised the branch, his eyes glinting with a terrifying, predatory light. Time seemed to slow, to stretch, to warp. Jack tried desperately to move, to shield Penny, to do something, but his body was a leaden, unresponsive weight. This was it. He'd failed her. He'd failed them both. Then another voice, calm but undeniably authoritative, sharp as a well-honed blade, cut cleanly through the thick, palpable tension. "Drop the branch. Now." Raymond froze mid-swing, his head snapping towards the sound. All three of them, Jack, Penny, and Raymond, turned towards the newcomer. A man stood at the edge of the small, rain-swept clearing, tall and lean, dressed in practical, well-worn camouflage. A hunting rifle was slung easily over his shoulder, but his hands were empty, held slightly away from his body in a non-threatening posture. His eyes, though, were sharp, intelligent, and missed absolutely nothing. They swept over the scene. Jack's injured arm, Penny's tear-streaked face, Raymond's menacing stance, in a single swift, assessing glance. "I said drop it," the man repeated, his voice, though still calm, now gaining an unmistakable edge of tempered steel. Raymond hesitated, his malevolent gaze flicking nervously between the newcomer and the children. For a terrifying moment, Jack thought he might lunge, might try to finish what he'd started. "I really wouldn't if I were you." the man said, his gaze unwavering, pinning Raymond in place. "I've been tracking game, and sometimes things much worse, in these woods, since before you were even born. I know how to handle predators. And you, friend, look an awful lot like one right now." Raymond's eyes narrowed, filled with impotent rage, but some of the wild fight, the unhinged aggression, seemed to drain out of him. With a frustrated snarl, he let the heavy branch clatter heavily to the muddy ground. The man took a cautious, measured step forward. "You kids all right? You look like you've been through hell and back." Jack couldn't speak, could only manage a weak, almost imperceptible nod. Penny was still crying, hiccuping sobs, but she'd stopped screaming, her eyes fixed on the stranger with a mixture of fear and dawning hope. "My name's Michael Thornton," the man said, his eyes flicking again to Jack's grotesquely swollen arm and then back to Raymond, his expression hardening. "Looks like I interrupted something." "Serious." He unclipped a small, rugged satellite phone from his belt. "I think it's high time we called the sheriff. Get this whole mess sorted out." Raymond's face, already pale, turned a sickly ashen gray. Now hold on just a minute. There's no need for that. We can talk about this." "No holding on," Michael said firmly, his thumb already expertly dialing. "You had your chance to do the right thing. Looks like you blew it." He glanced at Jack, his expression softening with concern. "Son, you look like you're about to keel over any second. Your arm... What happened there?" Broken Jack whispered the single word, a colossal, exhausting effort. Raymond, he broke it. Weeks ago. Then he left us, out here." The world, which had momentarily stabilized, began to spin faster colors, bleeding into a sickening vortex. Darkness, cool and inviting, clawed at the edges of his vision. He heard Michael's voice, strong, calm, and reassuring, speaking into the phone. "Yes, Sheriff, Michael Thornton here. I'm out by the old Hemlock Ridge Sector 7. Got 2 children abandoned, looks like the boy's in real bad shape. Arms broken, high fever. And we have an adult male here. Name's Raymond Mercer, you say? Well, I'll be damned. He's right here with me. Uncooperative, looking guilty as sin, but contained for now. Yeah, I'll keep him here. Hurry." The last thing Jack saw before the welcoming darkness swallowed him completely was Michael Thornton, moving with quiet confidence to stand directly between them and the furious, defeated Raymond, a solid, unwavering protective shield. Miles away, in the sterile, impersonal environment of the Mercer house, which now felt more like a crime scene, Diane, her voice hoarse, raw, and trembling, had finished her tearful, rambling confession to a grim-faced, patient female detective hours earlier. He lost everything. She'd whispered, her hands twisting convulsively in her lap, her face a ruin of tears and sleeplessness. His so-called investments. They were all a sham, high-risk gambles. He was obsessed with some story. He'd heard something about the children's mother that she'd supposedly hidden away, a small inheritance from her mother, a trust fund or something before she died. He thought if he got custody of the kids, he could somehow, I don't know, access it. He'd been trying to find information, anything. He kept saying if he could just find the key, their lives would change. Her voice dropped lower. "He took most of our savings, what little was left when he left them in the woods. He said he had to make sure the woods kept its secrets, kept them quiet about his plan B. He'd always been so controlled, so meticulous, but the past few weeks, he was completely unraveling, coming undone. This morning, when he grabbed that old rusty hunting knife from the shed before he left, muttering something absolutely terrifying about needing to check on his investment and silence any liabilities, I knew. I just knew he was going back for them. To finish it." The detective's jaw had tightened perceptibly, her eyes hardening. An updated urgent alert had gone out almost immediately. Mercer potentially armed and considered extremely dangerous, likely returning to the original area of abandonment. Motive silencing witnesses to his initial crime, and possibly to prevent them from revealing his deranged financial plot. Michael Thornton moved through the bruised pre-dawn gloom with the quiet, fluid assurance of a man intimately, almost symbiotically familiar with the ancient, undulating Green Mountains. At 52 lean and weathered, he'd hunted and tracked in these Vermont woods for over 4 decades since he was a boy younger than Jack. The latest weather report had promised another vicious, unseasonable storm front moving in by midday. And he'd risen well before first light to check his network of trail cameras, hoping to finally track a magnificent, elusive 10-point buck he'd been patiently observing for weeks. The river now, a swollen, angry, roaring beast from the night's torrential deluge, provided a thunderous, relentless soundtrack to his solitary, focused trek. He'd been following increasingly fresh, desperate signs for the past hour. Small, heart-wrenchingly tiny sneaker prints, one set noticeably dragging a child's brightly colored dropped mitten he'd found snagged cruelly on a thorn bush a mile back. Then he'd heard it, Penny's thin, terrified shriek echoing faintly carried on the wind through the dense, dripping trees. He'd immediately quickened his pace, a cold, uneasy premonition gripping his heart. The focused beam of his powerful flashlight had first caught Raymond half-crazed, wild-eyed, menacing the children with the upraised branch. Then he saw the boy Jack propped weakly against a mud-caked tree trunk, his face flushed with a fever so dangerously high it was palpably apparent even in the dim, uncertain light, and the little girl Penny bravely, defiantly standing over him, a tiny, furious guardian angel facing down the monster who was unbelievably their foster father. Years of training and deep-seated instinct took over. His initial calm, authoritative commands, his deliberate, calculated display of the satellite phone as he dialed 911, pointedly clearly emphasizing the name sheriff, were all carefully designed to disarm and intimidate Raymond. He hadn't expected the dispatcher to confirm with chilling urgency that Mercer was already a wanted man, considered armed, dangerous, and highly unstable, or the tactical teams were already discreetly, strategically closing in on the area. As Michael ended the call, relaying their precise GPS coordinates, Jack, who had been swaying precariously, had finally collapsed unconscious. Penny, despite her own profound terror and exhaustion, rushed immediately to her brother's side, trying to rouse him. Michael gently, firmly guided her back, carefully, deliberately placing himself between the vulnerable children and the now seething, cornered Raymond. "You're not going anywhere, Mercer." Michael said, his voice low, calm, but carrying an unmistakable current of absolute authority. "Help's on the way. For them. And for you." Within minutes, the crackle of police radios and the urgent shouts of men echoed through the trees closer now. 2 armed state troopers, moving with practiced tactical precision, burst into the clearing. First weapons drawn and ready, followed closely by a team of grim-faced paramedics. Raymond, seeing he was hopelessly surrounded and utterly outmatched, offered no further resistance. He was roughly cuffed, Mirandized, and led away, his face a contorted mask of impotent, snarling fury. One of the troopers, a burly, weathered man, with surprisingly kind eyes, knelt beside Michael, who was already helping the paramedics. "You're Thornton, right? We got your call just as we were tightening the cordon." Diane Mercer's confession. She told us he was obsessed with some hidden money and was coming back to tie up loose ends. "You almost certainly saved their lives today, mister. We were afraid we'd be too late." Michael just nodded, his attention completely focused on the paramedics swarming with urgent, quiet efficiency around Jack. They worked with swift, practiced precision. An IV line already started, a small oxygen mask fitted over his pale face. His filthy makeshift bandage carefully, expertly cut away. Severe compound fracture radius and ulna significantly displaced. grossly infected, signs of sepsis developing. Febrile, tachycardic, hypotensive, one paramedic rattled off a grim litany to his partner. We need airlift stat, can't risk transport by ground in this condition. Penny watched her wide, luminous blue eyes, enormous with a terror that went beyond words, clinging tightly to Michael's offered hand. Is Jack going to die? She whispered, her voice barely audible. No, sweetie. Michael said, his own voice, thick with an emotion he couldn't quite name, a powerful, unexpected surge of fierce protectiveness. He carefully scooped her slight, shivering form into his arms. He's a real fighter, your brother. A true champion. And these people, they're the very best. They're going to make him all better, you'll see. He felt her small body trembling violently against his chest. Your brother is incredibly brave, Penny. The bravest boy I've ever met. And so are you. You're his little lioness. The distinct, high-pitched whine of a helicopter grew rapidly louder, the powerful downdraft whipping the surrounding trees into a frenzy. A rescue basket was expertly lowered through a small opening in the canopy. Jack, now stabilized and strapped securely to a specialized stretcher, was carefully, gently loaded. A flight paramedic ascending with him, monitoring his vitals. Michael held Penny tight, shielding her face from the flying debris and the emotional impact, as her brother was lifted slowly, inexorably, into the turbulent gray sky. We'll follow them in the ambulance. With the nice officers, Penny, Michael promised, his voice gentle but firm. I won't leave your side for a minute, not until you're with Jack again. You have my word. She nodded silently against his shoulder, her small arms wound tightly around his neck, clinging to him as if he were her last remaining anchor in a terrifyingly stormy sea. Promise, she breathed. Promise. The ride in the back of the warm ambulance lights, flashing escorted by a state police cruiser, was a surreal, exhausting blur. Penny, after a brief but thorough examination by a kind paramedic, revealed significant dehydration, malnutrition, severe exhaustion, and multiple minor cuts and abrasions, but thankfully, no life-threatening injuries, finally succumbed to a deep, dreamless sleep against Michael's side. He looked down at her tangled strawberry blonde hair, her dirt-smudged angelic cheek, and felt a fierce, unexpected, almost overwhelming surge of protectiveness, of possessiveness, that startled him with its intensity. At Burlington Medical Center, a specialized pediatric trauma team was already assembled and waiting. Dr. Mei Chun, a kind-faced, highly respected pediatric specialist, with gentle eyes and a soothing, calm voice, examined Penny thoroughly, her every touch and word designed to reassure. Jack took good care of me. Penny explained simply, her voice small but clear, when the doctor gently praised her remarkable resilience and courage. He's my big brother. Well, he certainly did an amazing job, Dr. Chun replied, smiling warmly. And now it's our turn to take very good care of both of you. As Penny was settled into a bright, child-friendly pediatric room, an IV drip slowly rehydrating her. A calm, compassionate social worker named Andrea Lewis arrived, her expression a mixture of concern and professionalism. Their mother died just over 2 years ago, a tragic overdose. Andrea explained quietly to Michael in the hallway, her voice low and filled with a weary sadness. They've been through 5 foster homes since then. The Mercers. On paper, they passed all the preliminary screenings with flying colors. Raymond Mercer had no prior criminal record, no red flags. Diane Mercer provided extensive details this morning about his escalating paranoia, his recent significant financial losses through what sounds like gambling, and his increasingly desperate delusional belief that the children's maternal grandmother had left a substantial secret trust fund for them that he could somehow access. His statement to her that he was going back to ensure his investment in their silence wasn't discovered. It's chilling. She'll likely face charges, of course, for her inaction and failure to protect. But her cooperation has been very significant in understanding his motives and securing his quick apprehension. A little later, Dr. Alok Patel, a distinguished orthopedic surgeon with tired but kind eyes, came to update them on Jack's condition. He's out of surgery. It was a complex procedure. We had to reset both the radius and ulna, which were badly displaced, and debride a significant, deeply embedded infection. He's on high-dose intravenous antibiotics and will require at least one more surgery to ensure proper healing. He's currently stable but critical in the pediatric ICU. He's young, inherently strong, and he has a powerful will to live. Barring any unforeseen complications, we expect him to make a full recovery, but it was incredibly close. Another 12, maybe even 6 hours out there with that level of aggressive sepsis rapidly setting in. He wouldn't have made it. He shook his head, his expression grim. You found them just in the nick of time, Mr. Thornton. Literally. Relief, profound, bone-deep, and overwhelming, washed over Michael, leaving him momentarily weak-kneed. As Penny slept soundly, her small face finally relaxed. Michael sat quietly by her bed, Andrea Lewis gently, skillfully probing. You've clearly formed a strong bond with them, Mr. Thornton. It's completely understandable given the circumstances. Have you ever by any chance considered foster care? The question stunned him into silence. Him, a lifelong bachelor, a confirmed solitary outdoorsman, his home. A quiet refuge from the world, yet the indelible image of Jack's selfless courage, of Penny's fierce, tiny resilience, of her hand clutching his. Detective Wilson, the kind-eyed trooper from the rescue, arrived to provide an update. He confirmed Raymond Mercer was securely in custody, facing a terrifying raft of charges, including 2 counts of attempted murder, multiple counts of felony child endangerment and kidnapping. He confessed everything once he realized the game was up. Wilson said, his voice hard. Admitted to going back, specifically said the girl Penny was too smart that she might talk, might remember things about his financial schemes he'd muttered about. He was completely unraveling, spiraling fast. He knew Diane had called us. He was trying to eliminate his problems before we found him. The detective then added, we also confirmed the existence of a modest trust fund established by their maternal grandmother, held securely for the children until they reach adulthood. Mercer had somehow found out about it and became obsessed with the idea of getting his hands on it. Seems that was his primary motive all along beneath the anger and cruelty. This confirmed the ugly truth painting Raymond's actions in an even more monstrous light. Later that afternoon, Penny, awake, alert, and tentatively eating some applesauce and crackers, asked, her voice still small but stronger now, can I see Jack? Please, I need to see him. Dr. Chun, after conferring with the PICU staff, arranged a brief, carefully monitored visit. The pediatric ICU was an intimidating, overwhelming place. A symphony of quiet beeps and hisses from complex monitors, a tangle of tubes and wires, Jack looking impossibly small and pale in the large, sterile bed, his badly injured arm, now encased in a bright, cheerful blue cast that seemed incongruous with the seriousness of his condition. Penny Pie Jack whispered, his voice weak, raspy, but his eyes clear of the raging fever, now lighting up with an incredible luminous joy as he saw her. You're okay. You're really okay. Uh-huh, I'm super okay, and you're getting better, Dr. Chun said. So, Penny announced proudly. Mr. Michael found us Jack. He's a hero. He caught Mr. Raymond the bad man. Jack's gaze filled with an emotion Michael couldn't quite decipher. Gratitude, awe, relief. Found Michael, who was standing quietly by the door. You kept your promise. He managed a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips. You found us. Thank you. Then, with a sudden urgency, his eyes clouded with a familiar fear. They won't separate us again. Please, Mr. Michael. We have to stay together. Never, Michael said the word, a solemn, heartfelt vow, spoken with a firmness and conviction that surprised even himself. Not ever again. I'll make sure of it. Jack seemed to relax visibly, a tiny sigh escaping his lips. Then, with the direct, unnerving, innocent honesty of a child, he asked Mr. Michael, "Do you have any kids of your own?" "No, Jack, I don't." Michael replied, a strange pang in his chest. "Oh." Jack was silent for a moment, then stated with quiet certainty, "You'd be a really good dad." He paused, his gaze unwavering. "Miss Lewis, the nice lady, she said we might have to go to a new foster home soon. What if we could maybe stay with you, just for a little bit, until I'm all better?" The raw, unadulterated trust in the boy's eyes, especially after all the horrors, the betrayals he'd endured from adults, pierced Michael to the very core of his being. Is that something you'd really want?" Jack Michael asked gently, his voice a little husky. Jack nodded, a small, decisive movement. "Penny likes you a lot. She told me. And you found us when no one else could. I trust you, Mr. Michael." A decision unexpected but absolutely irrevocably certain crystallized in Michael's heart. It felt like leaping off a cliff into an unknown sea, but also strangely like coming home. If Ms. Lewis says it's possible, and if all the rules allow it, then yes, Jack. Yes, Penny. I'd like that very, very much. Jack's smile, though weak and tinged with exhaustion, was utterly blindingly radiant. It was the most beautiful thing Michael had ever seen. Andrea Lewis, when Michael sought her out later and explained his unexpected life-altering decision, wasn't entirely surprised. "I had a feeling this might happen," she admitted with a small, knowing smile. "Jack asked me the very same thing just before his surgery. He's quite taken with you. We can certainly expedite an emergency kinship or foster placement given the circumstances. There will be a thorough home study background checks training. It's a lot of significant commitment, but for these two extraordinary children." His modest, comfortable 3-bedroom house, usually so quiet, nestled on the edge of the woods, his flexible, self-employed wildlife consultant schedule. It was suddenly, undeniably, terrifyingly, wonderfully possible. That evening, Michael sat with Penny in her cheerful hospital room as she solemnly, meticulously fed tiny pieces of cracker to a brand-new, fluffy, hospital-gifted teddy bear, which she had named Michael Jr. "Penny," he began, his heart thumping a little nervously, "how would you feel about you and Jack coming to stay at my house for a while, when you're both feeling much better and stronger?" Her wide, expressive blue eyes widened even further, sparkling with a mixture of astonishment and dawning hope. "Your house, Mr. Michael. To live there with you. For a while, yes," he confirmed, his voice gentle. "Or maybe for a long while. I have 2 nice empty bedrooms just waiting. And there's a big, strong old oak tree in my backyard, just perfect for a tire swing. We could build one together." A swing, she breathed, her eyes like saucers. "Like the one at..." Before, would Jack have his very own room with a window, and would you be there all the time? Even at night when it's dark, he certainly would. His own room with a big window looking out at the woods. The safe, friendly part of the woods. And yes, I would be there. Every day, every night. And no one, Michael said, his voice fierce, with an unshakable, profound conviction, no one will ever hurt you or Jack in my home again. Not ever. The only woods we'll visit from now on will be for fun, for adventures. And we'll always come back home together. Safe." Penny nodded solemnly, absorbing his words. Then, with a gravity that belied her years, she extended Michael Jr. towards him. "Mr. Bear says yes. He really, really likes your house. And I say yes too, Mr. Michael. A big giant yes. Michael carefully accepted the proffered bear. Thank you, Penny. And thank you, Mr. Bear. That means a whole lot to me. I think we're all going to be just fine. More than fine. And as he said the words, looking at her bright, hopeful face, he knew with a certainty that settled deep in his soul that it was true. The oppressive weight of silence, of unspeakable horrors endured in the darkness, was slowly, surely beginning to lift. In its place, he could almost hear the fragile, tentative, beautiful sounds of healing, of nascent hope, of a future these two remarkable children. And perhaps he too, a solitary man, who hadn't known what he was missing, had never ever dared to imagine. A makeshift family forged in the crucible of terror and despair, now bound together by unbreakable threads of courage, resilience, trust, and the quiet, steady, unwavering promise of a true home. Justice swift and unrelenting would find Raymond Mercer. Healing slow but profound would find Jack and Penny. And Michael Thornton, the quiet, solitary hunter of the Vermont woods, realized he had stumbled upon something far more precious, far more vital than any elusive 10-point buck. He'd found a reason. He'd found his pack. He'd found a family.